Jenna, what is it you're overthinking this week? I mean, it
Yeah.
can be Travis and Taylor. Like, what is it that's been most on your mind this week? And then you
I,
turned 35 yesterday, which is
I
kind of a
turned,
milestone number.
I guess, yeah. Which didn't really hit me until I guess my other friend turned 35 and people were saying it to her. And I was like, I guess it's a milestone. Like, is it? Whatever. I feel like every year in your 30s, you're just kind of like, it is what it is. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm also 35, single, no kids, which always comes with its own questions or you know concerns, a lot of concerns from people, even though
But you're happily single, 35, no kids.
I couldn't be happier exactly
Yes.
with where I'm at, which people, it's more of other people having a hard time accepting that than it is me having a hard time with it.
Right. And you've told me, and I don't know if you want to say this publicly, that you don't want kids, which I can cut that out if you want, but I feel like
No.
that makes it a little different because if you do want kids, which of course is obviously fine,
Yeah,
there becomes like a biological clock element of
yeah,
turning
of
35
course.
and everything. But if you don't have that, it's kind of like, well, what the every it takes that pressure off, you know?
Exactly. And I feel so terribly for people who are my age who really want that and that's like their focus. But for me, that's why I feel so at peace with where I'm at and what I'm doing because I'm not like every day just like, oh, biological clock is ticking and when am I going to have it, blah, blah, blah. So it's just like that having no pressure when it comes to that is so peaceful. And yeah, I have no issues, no regrets. I'm very pleased with where I'm at right now. So
Well, I
35
love that.
is a milestone, but it was here we are.
Here we are. What I remember about turning 35 is I realized on the day of my 35th birthday that I had to renew my license. And if I didn't get down, I was in Chicago. If I didn't get down to like the government building, whatever that was, to renew it that day, I'd have to retake the written version.
Oh
So I
God.
had to
And we
rush
all know your
down.
track record.
And no, my driving record's terrible. So I had to head down there and I got there and I like didn't have a piece of mail that I needed or
Of
something. So I
course.
had to
You
go
never know.
back. I spent my entire day doing this. Had to
Yes.
go back, get the piece of mail, get back there
Yes.
and get my license renewed. I failed the test. The lady was like the written version and she was like, just study this book and come back in like 10 minutes. And so that I studied the book, came back in 10 minutes. And like I just remember that's all I remember is the DMV for my 35th birthday. It was clearly very traumatic.
Clearly. I mean, that's not what anyone wants to remember for their 31st or
No.
any birthday, really. That's terrible.
We are going to talk about kind of like childhood labels and
Yeah.
sibling order and what it means to be the youngest.
Yeah.
Today we were going to be joined by our sisters and they couldn't make it, but we're still going to have a good conversation
Of
about
course.
being the youngest. So just to set the stage really quick. Obviously, well, I don't know if it's obvious, but I think I'm going to say it in the intro. Jenna and I are cousins
Yes.
and her mother and my father are siblings and been, you know, very close to our families are very close. And she has an older sister and I have an older sister. And your age difference is how much?
For 5 years.
5 years.
4.5
Yeah,
years.
because she's about to turn 40.
Yeah. So we always hit our milestones together. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. My sister is 2 years older than me, so it's a little bit different there. But we always had these very similar sibling dynamics.
Yes.
With the older sister, younger sister, there was just two of us. And our sibling dynamics just played out very similar in our family. And what they were, where our older sisters were kind of the wild one, and we were kind of the let's not get in trouble, let's keep the peace, let's
Yeah.
be the good one. So
Yeah.
first of all, I just want to say this that I found this quote according to a study at MIT. Second born children are often the most rebellious. So just a note not to trust anything you read on the internet. It's all trash.
Interesting.
Um I will say though,
You do hear that though.
you do hear that, and we are
Yeah.
definitely we don't follow that, but we did strike out on our own more just in terms of we left home
Yes.
and the girls, Carrie and Kara, their names are even similar. Um, stayed in. Kara has moved now to Maine, but
Yeah.
stayed home longer, I guess I would
Yeah.
say. So maybe that's just a little bit of that rebellious
Yes.
spirit, I guess I would say.
Yes.
But so in this episode, we're going to talk about kind of the labels you grow up with in your family and how you carry them around, and how, even if they're good labels, like I am the good kid, I am the good one, how that can kind of carry on to adulthood
Mhm.
and affect you, and how you kind of need to think about your labels.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Love it.
What kind of labels do you feel like you picked up in childhood, just in your sibling dynamic and in your family system?
I mean, I certainly, and I don't even think it was never, of course, like assigned to me. It was just I absorbed being, and I don't even want to say like the good kid, because
Mhm.
nothing, it's not as though I was going above and beyond of doing anything, spectacular. But, my sister was more rebellious and more, willing to push the limits of the boundaries with what my parents were asking her to do or not asking her to do. She had no issue staying out past curfew or sneaking out or, going to parties, XYZ. So I think by nature, and there was so much I didn't even know about as a child because, I was 5 years younger and my parents were trying to be protective, of course. So, I think by nature, I just saw that Kara was doing something that maybe was upsetting them. Therefore, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make sure I wasn't adding more stress. Therefore, I became the good child,
Mhm.
um, which is my own interpretation of how things were. My parents have never said Jenna's the good child, Kara's the rebellious child,
Sure.
whatever.
Yeah.
But it's something that starts very young, and then you start to kind of, like you said in your book, like you carry that with you, and it changes your perception of how you should approach things. So I always made sure, I was staying within the boundaries, I was following the rules, I was where I was supposed to be, I was checking in and calling back when no one had cell phones to make sure you were where you needed to be. So it does certainly carry on, even into my 35th year. You kind of carry those traits with you, which is very interesting.
Yeah. I think when I started really thinking about like labels a couple years ago, and labels kind of peels into shadow work, if anybody knows that buzzword, um, about like what are the sides of ourselves we hide or whatever. I of
Yeah.
course thought about like, growing up and your family system and all of these things. And again, it's kind of the same thing. Like no one was ever like, Lindsay's the good one, except probably my sister. My sister's mostly the one who like
Same
says
with
that
mine.
the most,
Exactly.
right? Like, you're the
Yeah.
good one.
Yeah.
Um, and what I saw is, Carrie was again pushing the boundaries and, you know, which is normal. There's always kind of one that pushes the boundaries and does her thing and whatever. And so Carrie was doing that. So I would make myself really small
Yeah.
to because it seemed like there was chaos and it seemed
Yeah.
like there was a lot going on. And so it seemed
Yeah.
like there was no room for me to do much of anything. Like, it was like, oh, I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to make any noise or anything because there's a lot going on in here. So
Yes.
I kind of like made myself very small and
Yeah.
was like, this house is already really loud with a lot of stuff. And so I'm gonna be like the smallest person in the room.
Yes.
And that was one, and that was probably okay at the time, it's probably necessary, but I realized that when I got older that I needed to shake that off, or I needed to
Yeah.
rewrite that label, because I'd be in meetings even,
Yeah.
and I would be like
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'd be like, "Wait, you can talk, you
You
can
have
be
things to
loud."
say. Yeah.
Yes, you have things to say. You can be loud, you can
Yes.
talk, you can take up space.
Yes.
I really had to even, like, meditate on that idea of, like, you can take up space, you can be loud, you can do all
Yeah.
of these things, where I felt like growing up, there, like, wasn't room for that,
Yeah.
and because I just felt like I needed to be in a smaller space, to if that
Right.
makes sense, you
Makes so much.
know?
Yep. Yeah, I feel that
Yeah.
too. And it took a long time for me to, like you said, you had to really focus on getting that space or feeling okay with it. I Until I was pushed into, honestly, it sounds so silly, but until I became like a server and you had to be, more social and more present, and like, and you have to yell at the kitchen and you have to say, order up, or, whatever, just having to take up more space, that finally pushed me to being bigger than I was ever comfortable being. And that's expanded ever since then. And now, I used to be the same way. Like, I didn't want to raise my hand and ask a question in class because what if it was a stupid question, or, what if someone else didn't, you know, had already asked it or whatever. And now I'm the loudest person in the room, and I do not care if anyone shares my opinion or not. Like, they will know what it is by the end of the meeting. So no,
Right.
definitely a association that comes with the labels, but you do certainly carry that with you for a long time, I would say.
Yeah, when you think about that small, like, label, can you think back to, like, a memory that surrounds it? Like, can you think back to, like, an original memory about it?
I think that, so I mean, again, not to like, and I'm not ragging on my sister at all, but she was so much more outgoing and bigger than life, and willing to go toe to toe with my parents so often that I I don't know. It was just like whenever I saw that was all happening, I would just automatically be like, okay, well, you just kind of automatically like shrink back, and you're like, you become a very good observer. Like, I'm always, even today, I'm a very observant person, like, because I never was speaking in these conversations. I hate conflict,
Yeah.
absolutely hate conflict. And not to say, my household growing up was crazy or anything, but it's just, you kind of learn that those are the things that are going to trigger you to have a reaction of, okay, now I know I don't want to argue over something like that that's going to cause something bigger than it needs to be. Like, I'll just let it go, which maybe is also not a great thing sometimes. But so there was definite, like, Kara wanting to, do whatever, or go wherever, and mom and dad are like, maybe you shouldn't do that. And then I would start to see the like wheels start turning, and I'm like, ooh, I don't know. I don't like
Yeah.
that. So those are like the moments. Nothing like, there wasn't like a one thing that, or any one memory that stands out of it, but those were the times where I'd be like, okay, like, I'm taking notes on, like, I guess what I shouldn't do when I get to be her age. And even though I did get in trouble a little bit, but I was so cagey about it, or I should say opposite of cagey. I would just like spill the beans. Like, I'm such a bad
Me
liar.
too.
I would just be like, okay, so this happened, and here I'm over here, and I'm not actually spending the night at Kelly's house, and blah blah
I
blah. And
would
they're
too.
like, and I do remember I was so little. I don't even know how old I was. Old enough to be sitting at a little desk in my room coloring. And for some reason, I just took a marker and like drew a small line on the wall. And my mom walked by the door, and I just covered it with my hand. And she was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I drew on the wall, and I'm so sorry, and I don't know why I did it." And it was like not a big deal. She got a sponge and wiped it right off, but I was just like, "I'm so sorry." And she's like, "Are you okay?"
I'm the same way. I'm like, I will immediately tell you when I did something wrong. Like, I can't handle the guilt.
Oh, and I would much rather get ahead of it than have someone else find it and then be like, I don't know, behind the eight ball. Just ridiculous.
I have these memories of, like, it's kinda like when your family even, like, your family would be there or, like, all of our families would be together, and there's
Yeah.
this, like kinda like I would always sit in a specific part of our living room. It's kinda,
Yeah.
like, over by the fireplace and
Yep.
just kinda, like, sit there. I still like sitting there because it's really warm there,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I would kinda sit there just because it was, like, I could almost hide there,
Oh,
and, like,
yeah.
when we had, like, a lot of people there and it seemed like my sister would be, like, there talking loud and, like,
Yes.
holding court, like, whatever, and I'd be like, "I'm just gonna sit over here and, like, not really say anything,"
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just felt like I just felt like there was no room for me, really, you
I
know?
Yeah. I also, and I feel like you might feel the same way too. I'm very sensitive to sound now as an adult. If
Yes,
if there's a lot, it could be like a group of like screaming kids, or it could just be loud adults, or it could just, I'm always so, it gives me such bad anxiety, and I hate when things are getting too loud, especially if you're like in a public place.
I do
I just
too.
around and I'm like, guys, like too much, too much, too much, or like, trying to be considerate of other people. But like if you're in a house and it's just like a lot happening, I just like need to remove myself. And like I think sometimes like my family, or when we go visit or do whatever, like they might think like I'm like mad or something, but it's really just like I can't stand the sound. Like, and I
Yeah,
that must come from back, when we were younger with all the chaos, or like if my sister and parents were yelling, or at our family reunions when things got so loud and crazy or whatever. It's just like I would kind of be the same way as you, like wanting that
be
little
like
peaceful corner just to kind of, have a second. So it is interesting how that can kind of come into play.
and that's why we're not having kids.
I can't imagine the screaming.
'Cause the
I
screaming? What?
I have a kid that has moved in up above me, and I'm like, I think I have to move.
So, what Jenna just said is really important that, we often have different interpretations of our childhood. And there's a story at the in the one of the last chapters of the book called Overthinking Reality, where my sister and I, you have these like stories of family lore kind of, and my sister and I have this story where we were on a family canoe trip in early 80s, so we were very young. And I had this memory of we were going down the river and our family canoe flipped over and like whoosh water washing by. We were fished out like we were in the Titanic, right? And then my sister has this memory of this happening, but my parents, why would they be in another canoe? I don't know, but in her memory, my parents are in another canoe, high and dry, and we're with another family going down the river, and we flip with this other family. My parents are like, hi, and we get fished out. So
Yes,
my sister and I talk about this only recently, a couple years ago,
I
and
remember.
we tell my parents that we tell my mom
They're
this,
like,
and my
we've never
mom
been on
is
a day
yeah,
in our
my
life.
mom's like, "What?" No, my mom was like, "What are you guys talking about? That happened to another family. We
We
were
just
all together in the canoe, completely fine, like eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and we watched this other family flip their canoe. You guys were not, you guys were dry. You
Yeah,
guys were fine. Calm down."
we were
And
having milkshakes on the side of the lake, just
yeah,
watching.
you guys, and if my mom's just like, I mean, and if I was my mom, I'd feel this way too. Like, I have no chance of ever doing anything right if these bitches are over here misremembering everything from their child.
Yeah.
So, the point I make in the point I'm making now and the point I make in the book is your reality is your choice. Don't
Yeah.
flip your boat for no reason.
Yeah.
And I read this other quote recently that was like that I loved and I wrote down and wanted to talk to you about today. Reality is created by the stories you believe. So pick the right stories.
Mhm.
So our stories only have as much power as insofar as they are believed. So
Yes.
what are you telling yourself about your life or your limitations that you need to change?
Yeah.
do you need a new story? So
Yeah.
I think that kind of goes into labels too. Like labels are also stories. Like if you're
Yeah.
believing something
Yep.
about your childhood, like I'm small, I'm weak, or even our sisters, like if they're believing I'm the bad one or I'm the wild one or there's something wrong with
Exactly.
me, like you're believing this story from childhood and it only has as much power as you give it.
Totally. And I think you get a little nugget of that. And then if you get it young enough, then you're like, well, I already got this. So I might as well just like run with it. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's like such an interesting notion, especially like if you just keep building on it, like you
Yeah.
just keep creating like this mythology about you. It's like, what are
And
you
then
telling
get
yourself?
you get more comfortable in your bubble or out of it depending on what your label may be, and then it just continues to kind of compound until you're like, well, this is my whole identity.
This is my whole identity. Like you've grown this whole identity around I don't know, something stupid that happened when you were younger and
Yeah.
it's your I mean, you have the power to change it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's true. And I think that like it's so funny because there are aspects of um Kara when we were growing up that I was like, "Ah, I wish I could be more like her in the sense of like she's like not afraid to say anything, not afraid to say what's on her mind. Like she's not kept in a box of like I'm afraid to like mess up so badly that I'm not going to like go out and try things." Like I think that me having had the label of being like the quote unquote good child kept me from kind of exploring a little bit, you know what I mean? And trying things and whatever. And not to say like I didn't branch out a little bit down the road, but still it did keep me from getting in some trouble. But it's like you're just a kid. You should go try those things and like, do those, experiment a little bit. And but I guess we do or we don't for one reason or another, and it all worked out.
Well, that's kind of what shadow work was about. It's kind of
Yeah.
like look at your shadow or your label and like
Yeah.
figure out what has power about it. And I talk about this a lot. Like one of my shadow words was kind of like introvert, which is like goes into like small and like I'm small and not talking
Yeah.
a lot. And
Yep.
like, okay, well, there's a ton of power about that. Like, why do you think I'm a writer? Why do
Yeah.
you think I'm so comfortable being alone? Why do you think that I have the job I have? It's obviously comes from being an introvert, you know? And
Yep.
so, like, find the power in your label and kind of reframe that.
Totally.
And then,
Use it to
you
your
know,
advantage.
use it to your advantage and kind of reframe whatever it is, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, I just laugh so much at how similar, and I know we'll probably chat about it, but like how similar you and I really always have been from
I
day
know. I
down to our
know.
hair. I mean,
Well, it's straightened right
I
now
know we
and
both
it's
have a
really
straight,
naturally curly.
naturally curly. We're the younger ones. We're both single. We both don't have kids. We've kind of, as you said, we were the explorers. We left home after school. And we kind of both took interesting career paths that did end up being, like you said, it was using it to your advantage.
Mhm.
I used my kind of ability to, I guess, observe and
Read
I
people.
hate saying read people, um but yeah, read people, and now I work with people every day.
In HR, yeah, with
much,
people every
much to
day.
my dismay sometimes, but so yeah, it is just kind of funny how we we both had that from a very young age, and then it kind of took a very similar path, and here we are.
Here we are. That was gonna be what I was overthinking today was Matthew Perry.
Is that terrible?
It was literally like kinda it literally ruined my day when we were doing what were we overthinking this week. So, I mean, we found out Matthew Perry died last night
Yep.
and, um, obviously so sad because I love him, but
Yeah.
I was overthinking, like, you can be, like, so successful and still be so troubled, and in whatever thing I clicked on about it, the New York Post or something, they had a quote from him, and he was saying how he got the show when he was 24. He was on the show till he was 34,
Yeah.
and, like, such a formidable time of his life,
Yeah.
and he never really enjoyed it. Like,
No.
he just never really enjoyed the success. There was
Well,
3
he was
years
on
of the
drugs for so much of it too.
Right, there was 3 years of the show he doesn't even remember because he was
Yeah.
on pain pills so much.
Isn't that crazy?
So much of that cast talks about, like, while they were on the show, they were so busy trying to get movies and, like, all this other stuff because they wanted to break out of the not that they were gonna quit the show, but they wanted to break out of the mold of TV star. Like, they
Well,
were
but you
so
also
focused.
see the writing on the wall with the TV show. Like, it's not forever.
Right, and, like, back in the '90s, it was like, "Well, after this, I don't wanna just be a TV star. I wanna be
Yeah.
a movie
I want to
star."
be a feature film actor. Yeah.
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
funny because that's, like, not how it works now,
Yeah.
and
Like, I want a Netflix deal.
yeah, they were like, "This TV show is like, this like, literally Friends is the best thing that could ever happen to an actor," right? But back
Literally.
then, it was
Yeah.
like, "No, the best thing to ever happen to an actor would be then have a movie career."
Yes.
So they were all like, "We don't wanna just be TV actors.
Yeah.
We wanna go on auditions to become a feature film actor," like you were
Yeah.
saying,
Yes.
and which is hilarious because literally Friends is the best thing that could happen to an actor. And so it was just making me think about, like, living in the moment, like, the best thing that could ever happen to you could be happening right now.
Exactly.
Jenna, this could be the best thing that ever happens to you right now.
Clearly already is. This is what I've been working towards.
But anyway, I was just kind of my mind was going, like,
Well,
lots
it's
of places with
like
it.
2020, it's like so many people. That's such a metaphor for, like, truly, I mean, probably the world, but really I feel like America. It's like you're always nothing that you have now is good enough. You're always like looking 10 steps ahead, and then you get there and you're like, I regret. It's the whole, on your deathbed, you're not going to say, I wish I worked more.
Right.
People kill themselves working to then retire at the age of 70, 70, and then they're too old to enjoy what they have, and they didn't take the time to spend with family or vacation or travel because they had to work in order to get to retirement.
Yeah,
It's a vicious cycle. But yeah, it's true. You're always you're not enjoying what you have because you want something different.
I know. I
Terrible.
know.
Terrible.
But
Matthew.
he was hilarious, and I loved him so
Oh my god.
much. I think this is interesting. I say our labels live in our reactions to situations and people. So if you're having trouble finding your negative labels, check your reflection and your projections. So do you feel what I mean by that is like if you're kind of like, "Oh, I wonder what my labels are. I wonder what my labels are that I picked up in childhood or whatever." Like think about what bothers you. Like in life about other people, if you're sitting there and you're like, "Oh
How much
my
time do you
gosh." Yeah, yeah, right, exactly. But I really do try to think about that a lot. Like when I'm like, "Oh my god, that person, I can't stand that," or "I can't stand that," or "I can't stand that person," or "Oh, that's really bothering me." I'm like,
yeah.
"Well, why? Like, what does that say about me?" Or like, what am I trying to say to myself?
Yeah.
Like, check your reflection and your projections.
Wow.
And
It's a mature way.
I usually can figure it out. Sometimes I'm like, "Well, no, I just think people like that are assholes." Or,
You're just
I mean, sometimes, it's like,
yeah.
I don't like asshole drivers. It doesn't mean I'm an asshole driver. I actually am a terrible driver, so maybe there is some projection there.
You're
Uh,
terrible. Asshole.
but I think you can learn something about yourself and kind of uncover some, like, labels, if you look at that. Do you have any projections you wanna talk about?
Oh man.
Ugh.
I'd have to think about that. I'm very self-deprecating, which I feel like there's something to that.
Mm,
What? I couldn't tell you. Like that's where my humor is. We're also
So am
both
I.
very funny, Lindsay. Go us.
I know, yeah, I'm very self-deprecating too, yeah. You are hilarious. Your toast at your sister's wedding was so funny.
Thank you. um Actually there's probably something to that. To we're both very humorous people. I feel like I'm probably funny by fixing, uncomfortable situations.
Right. You're trying to you probably learn something. I mean, I think our sisters are funny too,
They are.
but I think we probably learned something about lightening the situation
It's
because
more less for them, it's more for the for maybe like parents or whatever. Trying to
Mhm.
always lighten a situation. That's
Mhm.
definitely, as I said earlier, anti-conflict. I will make a joke in the middle of something that is not funny at all, trying to just like shift gears for everyone. Uh,
Right.
but when it comes to like things that bother me about people and how it comes back to me, I'd have to really think about that. That's a
Yeah.
deep one. That's a deep one.
Deep
What is
one.
your thing?
Um, I always had, like, a thing around being, like, incompetent,
Yeah.
like, not incontinent, but
No.
incompetent, like, that I wasn't
We haven't had kids. We're not incontinent.
not incontinent yet. Um,
Yet is the key word.
like, I always had something about, like, I wasn't good at my job or, like, whatever, and,
Yeah.
I think that came from, like, when I started working, I really was totally incompetent, like, for many years.
Yeah.
But now, like, when someone's not very good at their job, like, I feel like I'm a really compassionate person, but I don't have a lot of compassion. I'm always like, "Why do you suck so bad?" Like, if I'm on a project with someone,
Yes.
and I think it's because, like, I don't know, it's really because, like, one of my, like, deep-seated fears or deep-seated, like, projections is, like, I don't wanna be seen as, like, incompetent, and it's,
Totally.
like, from, like, a long time ago.
That makes sense. I feel like I always have um I'm such an imposter syndrome person.
Oh, yeah, big one.
And I feel like if someone doesn't have imposter syndrome, then I just am like, well, then you're a psychopath. Like I can't trust.
Right.
But like I feel like that has to be. I mean, I feel that I don't know. I clearly you always feel that because you feel like you're not smart enough or deserving enough or whatever. But it is kind of twofold, almost in the same way of like what you just said. But when I see people like getting a job, like or a promotion, I'm like, do you really deserve that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like projecting my imposter onto them somehow. But no, it is that's such an interesting concept, and I definitely want to like think on it, and I'll call you about
Yes,
it.
you can get back
But
to me.
no, but
It's
then
weird. I saw this. I subscribe to like all these random blogs, and I really just read the headline of it. But this guy who's very smart, he's like a professor. His blog was about how most people overestimate their abilities. Like most people think they're
yeah,
better at things than they actually are. And I'm like, how does that that's very interesting, but how does that track? Because we all have imposter syndrome. So I'm
yeah.
so confused about that study, but
Doesn't everyone feel this way?
like where is this coming from? Because I thought everybody thought they were terrible. Like we all were like deeply insecure.
No, I guess not. Not everyone. I guess I'll check myself.
I guess not his study, but
Oh my gosh,
interesting.
I hope imposter goes away eventually. I don't know. Every day I'm like, I'll be found out. I'll be fired soon.
No, I don't think it goes. I think, like you said, you'd be a sociopath if it went away.
True. Or just like
Um,
the most confident, egotistical person.
right, right.
Narcissist, I should say.
So we talked a little bit about our labels. Um, what are some labels you'd like to go forward with?
Ooh. I'd like to, oh man, that's a good
For your
one.
35th year.
I know, going to my 35th. I mean, I feel like I've successfully changed some of my labels. And not to say, like, I know we've said a lot, like, I was the good child or whatever. I'm still a good person. But I think that, like, there's been so much growth from where my labels started, of like we said, kind of almost the meek, quiet, reserved person just trying to make everyone happy. I always called myself Switzerland. That's my other label.
Yes.
Keeper, always so neutral. I love everyone. We're all best friends. So I'll do this twofold. I want to keep like that type of label. I love being able to kind of adapt and be with everyone, and like I don't like, one of the things that I really took away from, I think, my childhood and my labels is that I learned that I hate seeing someone who is being like ostracized, and like someone who doesn't have like an ally. And that would relate to like at school, the kid that like was awkward and didn't fit in or whatever. Like I would always seek them out and like make sure, like be like, hey, like how you doing, whatever. And I think that like that's a beneficial benefit of my Switzerland label from being younger. I always seek out the awkward people. But to change something, to change in my 35th year, or maybe chase, I mean, I'd like to always be a little more confident, I guess, and kind of shift from that imposter thing that I have. Like, it's funny, me and my friend joke so much that like we have the biggest egos. We don't care. Like, people's words don't bother us, or like we think we're like the greatest people on earth. But when it comes to certain situations, you're just always kind of like, there is that internalized doubt, I guess, or like no one has a perfect self-esteem. So I think that like fixing my internalized self-esteem and being more confident in certain situations, speaking up a little bit more, not too much, but a little bit more, I think those are my labels I would want to chase a little bit.
Yeah. Do you think there's any we're kind of answering that, but do you think there's anything you still carry from childhood? Like any like I'm small, I'm, you know,
only
whatever.
only when I'm put back in
Yes.
familial situation.
Yes.
It's interesting because you do kind of resort back to
yes.
I still am just trying to keep the peace, like not, even if it's just like a simple, misunderstanding, I'm always trying to explain both sides and like make sure everything's good. And I don't like I just want whatever it is to be done with so quickly that I refuse to like say anything that may stoke the fire a little bit, even if it's just a clarification, or oh, I don't think that's what they meant. I think they meant that, because I know I can read how that will what kind of turn that will take. So I do think that regardless of how old we get, you'll still carry certain things that you've kind of always had when you're put back in a similar situation. So yeah, I do still do a little bit of that small. I'm the escaping, like I want the quiet, I want all of that. That's
so
certainly
similar.
with me.
What you were just saying is this is like, I'm just like actually figuring things out about myself right now, Jenna. It's so funny. This is real time aha moments. So I do like so much of what you were just saying. Like when stuff is happening, whether it was a long time ago or now, it's like, okay, so much is happening. So many people are having so many feelings and opinions and like lots of feelings. So I'm not going to have any, not even that maybe I'm actually not going to have any, or I'm not going to tell mine because there's already a lot flying around. So I'm definitely not going to tell mine. And, I'll just, again, be small. I'm not going to share my opinion because there's not really room for it right now anyway, because there's a lot going on. And then now, who has a podcast where all she does is talk about her effing feelings? This girl.
You needed the platform and you grown for it. I think it's perfect.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
So
But yeah,
funny.
I used to always feel like that. It was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna stay Switzerland,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of emotions. No one needs to hear mine.
Yep. Yep.
And that's okay. I actually don't even mind that. But I just think it's ironic that then now all I do is talk about mine.
Yes. Yes. I love.
Hilarious.
Yes.
Hilarious. Uh I was gonna answer the questions I just asked you. What did I just ask you?
What labels do you want to carry, or what labels do you want to change, and what have you carried from your childhood?
Okay. Okay. Carried from my childhood. I think I can still I have to work myself out of the small thing all the time.
Yeah.
That one kind of like comes up. I have to like work myself out of it, and I meditate. Do you meditate?
No, I'm so bad at not being able to block everything. I can't.
Yeah.
It's like chasing the runner's high. I never was able to get a runner's high, so now I just don't run. I couldn't drown
Who
out the noise.
doesn't get a runner's high? What does that mean?
Like runners who
I know.
yeah, they
Well,
get the high, like, and then you feel great. Like I never have run to the point where I have that like euphoric feeling.
how far did you run?
I don't even think it's about distance. It's like it's just like once you kind of have figured out running and like you get to like a point of I don't know, like I don't know if it's an actual thing that happens while you're running or if it's like the concept of running, you get excited to do it. It's like I hate running and I was like I think I can do it enough and work myself into convincing myself I'm going to like it that I'll finally feel that like runner's high. I've never had that. So,
I was just I'm just
have
okay,
you?
sorry. I'm not gonna
Have you that?
belabor this. You can't run for 30 minutes and actually feel good afterwards. You don't get an endorphin.
God no, I hate running. You
Wow.
do?
No, I hate running too, but I mean, I'll actually if I make myself run for 30 minutes, I would feel good. Like I'm not immune to endorphins.
I mean, you'll feel accomplished, but I think there's an actual feeling of like while you're running, you're like, oh my God, this is everything.
I have done it where I've actually felt that, but I do hate running. But I mean,
Okay.
I've accomplished that feeling before, but
Okay. Good for you. Good for you.
no, but
Yeah.
I'm not gonna it's so hit or here's the thing about running. Is like that's so hit or miss. It's
Yeah.
like 5 times in 100.
Yeah.
Those aren't good odds for me.
Those aren't
No.
good.
No,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. So I can't drown out the noise enough to meditate, but maybe you could give me some pointers.
Okay, I'll give you a pointer and then we'll go back.
Okay.
Just if you Google, I always mispronounce this, binaural. It's BIAURAL, binaural beats. Do you know
Okay.
what those are?
No.
Um, it's like a humming tone, right? There's all
Okay.
different kinds of like I always want to say they're like binaural because it's like anyway, if you Google that, there's all
Okay.
different kind of tones. And if you
Okay.
have the tones in your ears, sometimes it's easier to just like meditate on the tone.
Okay.
And if you're meditating on the tone, like for some reason for me, I'm not thinking about anything else and I'll actually kind of be like, like
Got
zen out.
it. Okay. That seems helpful. I should do that.
Yeah, I like that. But anyway, sometimes when I'm meditating on that tone,
I can't just like sit in a quiet room. It's just
yeah, no, I agree.
like go get groceries.
Yeah. But when I'm
Yeah.
meditating on the tone, then I'll run like an affirmation. Like if I'm
Okay.
trying to, let's say, retrain a label, and I'll
Yeah.
be like, I am big, I am strong, I take up
Yeah.
space, like
Yeah.
kind of help you like work yourself out of a label. Okay.
Yeah.
So back to what I was saying, what we were saying. Still probably carry that.
Yeah.
If I want to go forward with a new label, it is probably just like I am worthy of, success and everything that I want in my life. Cause I do think that that kind of goes with it when you're like, I'm small, I'm not worthy of like all the
Yeah.
things that I want.
True. True. Yeah. It's not just a physical presence. It's certainly um, reaches other parts of your life. So that makes sense. You are
Yeah.
worthy. You wrote an amazing book and you have
You're
an
worthy. You're worthy.
we're the best.
We're the best cousins ever.